Hey guys, welcome back to Zach Going Fire. Today I'm going to walk you through how to know if you can retire now. I'm going to go step by step on the process to determine whether or not you can retire now. This is the process that I use, and I'm a truck driver. In case you haven't seen this channel before, I'm a truck driver who will be retiring next year before I turned 45 years old, and I was bankrupt just 10 short years ago. So let's get into these steps. Okay, so step number one might seem kind of basic, and we've gone over this before in this channel, but you need to put together a budget with all of your expenses, all of your expected income, and it doesn't matter whether you put it down as a weekly budget like I do, or a monthly budget, or a yearly budget. But you just need to make sure that you include all of your expenses and all of your income. And that budget, we'll come back to these steps later on. I'll go through these in more detail. But you want to double check that budget with a program like Monarch Money, which I've recently started to use to test out. And it's a great program just to make sure that you're catching all the expenses, and you can really use it to see whether or not you're being honest with yourself about how much you're spending and how much money you're making. Then you're going to put all of your expenses, all of your income, and all of your accounts into Projection Lab. And I'll show you more in detail about how we do that and what we're going to use that for. We're going to run various chances of success calculations in Projection Labs. And then finally, step number 5, we're going to review the cash flow tab in Projection Labs. And that's where you can really fine tune your plan and see where you might be missing something, where you might be going wrong, or whether or not you can retire now. Let's get into it. So if you've seen my channel before, then you have seen this spreadsheet. This is my budget, and I do my budget on a weekly basis. So the numbers that you're seeing all through here, these are the weekly numbers. So if you have a budget, if you have an expense rather, that is billed monthly to get the weekly amount, for example, Netflix is billed monthly. So to get the weekly amount, you're going to enter the number and just divide it by 4.3. If you have something that is billed annually, you would divide it by 52 to get the weekly amount. But you can do this, whether you do it monthly or yearly. You just want to get all of your expenses down into a spreadsheet. The reason why you want it in a spreadsheet is because it will make the next part of this easier. Once you get all of your expenses, so right now my weekly expenses are $1,508. So right now I'm not including these expenses here because these are expenses that will start after I've retired. They're not currently in my budget, but I wanted them here so that I can remember to add them in once I do retire. So my current weekly total I need is $1,508. So I have that down here. What you're going to do to figure out if you can retire now, you're going to multiply that by 25. That gives me about 1.9 million. Of course, there are expenses I know that I have now that I won't have in retirement. So I'm going to subtract those out. I know I'll be selling my car, and I know I won't be contributing anymore to my Roth IRA. I'm also going to end my memberships with Sam's and AAA and Amazon Prime. So all of these numbers in orange will get subtracted out to give me this weekly expense, right? $1,281. Multiply that by 52 is $66,000 a year. Multiply that by 25 to give you 1.6 million. We plan on retiring in another country, so our rent will no longer be this $579 for the apartment here, which is $2,500 or $2,490 a month. Our new rent, we plan on spending averaging around $1,500 a month, which you can see right here, the $350. That brings the new total down to just 1,052 a week. So that multiplied by the yearly amount and then multiply that by 25 gives you about 1.3 million. Now these are my numbers. You need to do this, of course, for your numbers and plug in your expenses. So we don't currently have the 1.3 million, but we do plan on working as a travel agent. So we have an annual goal of 26,000 a year as a travel agent. And that's because we plan on working part-time. We plan on making at least $500 a week as a travel agent. So we put in 500 times 52 gives us 26,000. So if we take 500 off of this weekly amount for our expenses, that brings us to the 552. Multiply that by 52 weeks, it's 28,000 a year, and multiply that by 25, that gives us 700,000. To sum things up here, our current net worth is between this 700,000 and this 1.3 million. So I know that I can retire now and we have some buffer. I would prefer it that we were above this number. That way we wouldn't have to rely on this income. But I know that we have a buffer to retire now. That buffer is very important, and we'll come back to the buffer in some of the next steps. You're going to review the numbers that you put into your spreadsheet with a program like Monarch Money or some other budgeting app. And I like Monarch Money because of the way that it pulls in my transactions and it will automatically categorize them for me. And if I don't like the way that it has categorized a certain transaction, I can make a rule for when a transaction comes in for that merchant that it goes to a certain type of category, or if it comes in from a certain type of credit card that I'm using, that it goes to a different category. I've only recently started using Monarch Money. You can see this is the monthly cash flow tab here, and you can see where the last 3 months it was able to pull in a lot, basically all of my transactions, but it didn't pull in all of the transactions further back than the 3 months automatically when I linked up all of my accounts. So I'm only looking specifically at the most recent 3 months. If I wanted to, I could go in and manually add in the transactions for more than 3 months back, but I'm not trying to do all that extra work right now. The most recent 3 months is good enough for me, just to see how I've been averaging. So I know that in the last few months we have actually been overspending on our budget. We originally had a budget here for gas and food of $250. So I've recently bumped that up to $275 because when I go into Monarch Money, and you can go to the assistant thing right here, and you can ask it something. So I asked it, how much do we spend on average each week on groceries and restaurants over the last 3 months? So it calculated that here for me. From August 1st through October 31st, your household spent a total of $3,803 on groceries and restaurants. Dividing this by the 14 weeks gives us an average of $271.65. That's why I increased our budget for the weekly amount from $250 to $275. And that's one of the places where it's good to have that buffer so that you can make adjustments on things like that, whether you need to tighten up your spending or whether it is because prices have gone up due to inflation. Only you would know which the case may be. So now that you've put everything into your spreadsheet and you've double checked your numbers in a program like Monarch, now you're going to get to step 3, and this is the fun part for me, the nitty-gritty detail, putting everything into Projection Lab. So let's get into that. So when you set up your account with Projection Lab, It's going to walk you through putting in all of your information. So once you've put in your information, you're going to get to your plan page. And in your plan page, you want to find down here where it has your accounts, income, expenses, real assets, and cash flow priorities. And you're really going to want to dive into each of these and make sure that you include everything that you can. Yes, Midnight. For example, you want to put in your checking account. So this is my Capital One account, and you want to put in the interest rate that you're getting. You want to put in, basically go through each of these um, options here and make sure that it's, play around with the different ways that you can set this up for each of your accounts. But basically you want all of your accounts to be set up here as accurately as possible. For example, if there's an account that you have that is part of your net worth, but you do not want to use it to draw down on, you can actually indicate that. You can tell it, don't pull any money out of this account. You can also hide it from your net worth. You can tell it to start adding money at a certain time and stop adding money at a certain time in the future. And you can tell it what kind of rates and growth you want for the investments. So all of mine I've just set up with my invested money set up at a 9% growth rate. Make sure that you put in all of your income. Now, the expenses is one of the best things that Projection Labs allows you to do, because in your spreadsheet, like going back to my spreadsheet here, even if you are very detail oriented, there's no way you can think about all of the different types of variables stretching out far into the future. That's where Projection Labs shines, because it's going to account for these expenses going up with inflation, and you can set the inflation, or it will tell you like what the average inflation is, and you can just have it as that. Hey, Midnight, go ahead, make yourself at home. So when you're going through your expenses, you really want to add in things that when you're thinking about retirement, add in some of your bucket list items, add in some of your dream vacations, and you can plug in things that, like for example, we know that we like to travel, so we have our pre-Fat Fire travel set at $10,000 a year, and we have that set to stop at a milestone. That's the other thing about Projection Lab. You can set up milestones. So for us, I defined Fat Fire as a major milestone in our life, and that will come when our net worth has 30 times our annual expenses. So at that point, when we reach Fat Fire, the pre-Fat Fire travel will expire, and we'll begin what we call big travel. And so we're going to be spending even more in travel when that happens. And that begins at Fat Fire and ends at the end of the plan, $25,000 a year. So you can also have things like, I have this emergency savings of $25,000, and I have it set to be expended now. So that's assuming we had an emergency right now that we had to spend $25,000. And that shows right here at the very beginning of the plan, this $25,000. Now, I can take that expense and deactivate it. And so you can see, as soon as I deactivated that, Midnight really wants to be part of this video. As soon as I deactivated that expense, it still has it here, the emergency, but you can see it's kind of grayed out. It took it off from here and it changed all the rest of this. We're hitting Fat Fire sooner. We're hitting financial independence sooner. So that's putting in all of your expenses, double check everything's right. Once you have put in all of your numbers, then go to the Chance of Success tab. And we're going to run this a few different ways because I never know which chance of success is more accurate. This ran 2,000 trials using a Monte Carlo simulation with historical returns data, giving us an 80% chance of return. What I recommend you do is go into the Customize and rerun the simulation for chance of success using different methodologies. So go here to Methodology, and instead of historical bootstrap, we're going to select one of the other methodologies here. This drop down menu, we're going to do historical looping and then hit rerun. So that gives us a 94.85% chance of success. That used 97 trials with that simulation. And use all the different methodologies that Projection Labs offers. I mean, you know, you don't pay extra for running the simulation again. So that's given us about a 96% chance of success. So to be conservative, you're going to want to find whatever is the lowest chance of success and use that. Let's see. This gives us about an 80% chance of success using that methodology. And only you are going to know what you're comfortable with as far as what chance of success you have. But the more flexible you are, the more you should be comfortable with a lower chance of success. Me personally, I believe that I would be comfortable with about a 50 or 60% chance of success. But that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, having a little bit of a buffer between what you need and what you have. So again, what we have just over $1.1 million, or just under 1.1 million. But all we need with our budget is about 718,000. Going back to Projection Labs, the final step that you want to do, and this is what really convinced me that we will be okay, is after you've put in all of your information and run your chance of success, go to the Cash Flow tab. Start with the current year and make sure that it looks accurate with how it's showing. This is on the left here is the income that we have this year, and on the right is all of the different expenses that you put in. Now, the more expenses that you put in, the more detailed oriented that you are, the more it's going to show here. And it does get complicated, but each one of these you can drill down into and make sure that the numbers are accurate. So with your drawdown strategy, when you're drawing the money out of the account, you can tell it what to draw down from first. You can tell Projection Lab to draw down first from your cash savings, and then from your 401k or your Roth IRA. It will have some suggested ways to withdraw the money, but you do want to look and see where the money is coming from. So for example, here we have 70,000 this year coming from my job. And then we are going to pull out 34,000 from my taxable brokerage account. And that's this year with me at 44 in 2025. Definitely make sure that you review at least the first few years in detail. So this, I'm going to jump forward to next year when I'm 45 in 2026. And I plan on stopping working next June. So I've got that plugged in here, with McLean only pulling in 35,000 for next year. We're going to sell our vehicles, so that goes into our income, and we'll withdraw 14,000 out of our taxable brokerage account. Over the years, it will show the expenses, and you can set it here with the chart options. Go to currency, and you can set it to use today's currency or actual currency, so it will keep track of inflation for you. And you really want to just continue to go through it for the first few years to make sure that it looks right. And of course, if the market drops, we'll have less to withdraw from. But the strategy, if you have a buffer, should be able to handle that. And the projections that it shows here, again, this is with assuming a 9% annual return. It's going to have more money left over in the end. And this is because I've set up this plan to withdraw only what our expenses are. So going back to the steps to know that you can retire, put together a spreadsheet, find out your annual expenses and multiply them by 25. That will give you your basic target. Double check your expenses in a program such as Monarch Money to make sure that you're being honest with yourself and that you're not missing any major expenses. I would recommend looking back at least the most recent 3 months. Enter everything you can think of into Projection Lab. You can try this program out for free. Then run your chance of success calculations and determine what you feel comfortable with. I would feel comfortable personally with a 60 or 70% chance of success, possibly even lower depending on how much buffer you have. Step 5, review your cash flow tab in Projection Lab. This is where you're really going to be able to see how much money is coming in and how much money is going out over the years. So I hope you've enjoyed today's rundown of how you know if you can retire now. I know that I'll be retiring next year after doing these 5 steps. And if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Let's continue to drive towards financial freedom.